Should you buy a cheap plastic boat like this one and modify it? My answer to that is no. Why would you want to do it? They're cheap, flimsy. They're not even the good plastic like the kayaks are made of. They're just janky to no end. And what it takes to make these on par with, say, an aluminum boat would take about 4 times the effort. Any reasonable person would say no to a project like this. That means any sort of real change to come forth in these platforms will come from somebody unreasonable. It may not make any logical sense to take it this far, for simply just to show you what we as a company are capable of doing for anyone. This is our story of the Palm Prowler, and if you have 10 minutes, check it out. FYI, this video is part of an entire series called 10-Minute Boat Builds, where we take all these boats and chop them down to 10 minutes. Check it out. This is the Palm Prowler 10 from Bass Pro Shops out of Las Vegas. The Palm Prowler 8 is way easier to modify, but the 10 is going to hold more. Plus, we already did the Palm Prowler 8 in a much more sensible and conservative build, which is way more popular than this thing, with only about 1/10 of the effort to build that. So, check that video out too, but, well, this one, we have plans for this one. And they don't involve those styrofoam blocks in there, they're in the way. We're going to make those into rod lockers and other forms of usable storage. Had a slight pit in my stomach when I gutted that, but after looking at all the condensation, I quickly understood why all these get waterlogged and eventually become useless as boats. We also compromised the structural integrity of that boat entirely, and now we have to replace it. I can only think of one way, which is to make a skeleton inside it, with some foam in there too. We're gonna try to replace some of it. No way we can replace all that block, but we'll have contingency plans like quad bilge pumps and other things in place to kind of make it all still very safe. Then I just put a top frame in and connect it all together, and it would just be all seamless. Except for, I found that plastic does not really like to bond to aluminum without warping and twisting and doing all kinds of stupid things. And you have to like rework and rework and rework until it works. I welded the subfloor solid in there because when I added just a straight wooden subfloor in there with like little wooden 2x2s, it creaked and cracked, and it was kind of annoying. And I was thinking, I didn't want to deal with this boat if it was gonna creak and crack all over the place like the other one did. But hilariously, the plastic didn't melt. It barely even scorched when I did all that. So there was a win there. I was a little worried that I would be kicking things off the side if I made this kind of a flat skiff style deck. So I wanted some sort of like side rail, something, right? Just to kind of protect the assets, not make sure like you don't kick the poles off the side. You only have like 4 feet across. And then there was a case of the boat is just small and will get owned in the wind and drift everywhere, and I needed legitimate anchors. But you can't mount these types of anchors to a plastic boat at all. Unless, of course, we make them custom. So we made our own little custom chassis that attached to that transom. Now that's just a cheap little piece of wood inside that plastic. That's what makes the transom. And, well, obviously that's not very trustworthy. So we had to bring the whole aluminum skeleton all the way to the back. Also had to add a complete new set of grab bars since the overlaying chassis took away the stock ones. For every problem we solved, we created 4 more. Like, how are you going to actuate these stupid anchors? I thought of a pin system, and I had wondered for a long time why nobody in the market does this. Hopefully they'll catch on, but the pin system, it's awesome. Took some tubing, did some welding, found some solid aluminum stock, found some springs from like those like remote control RC like hobby shops, and I got some plastic UHMW for bushings, slotted it all together, welded it on there, and you get to see the beauty of the system toward the end of the video. But right now we got to move on to the front. I just took a little bit of time there because the back was pretty tedious, and now the front is just gonna be maybe just as complicated. I don't know. I want to add dual graphs, a recessed foot pedal tray. I want a scissor mount trolling motor with live scope, but just putting an Ultrix on there, it's unrealistic. The thing weighs as much as a person. So we got a Minn Kota Edge, and we're gonna just make our own live scope turret that is very sleek and kind of just looks factory on it. I kind of racked my brain on this, but eventually came to a design where I just used a kayak rudder system, used the cables and the controls, and mounted it through my own little thing here. This was one of the more challenging, possibly it was the most challenging project I've ever had to do, because there was like moving parts. It's pretty easy to modify a boat because the only moving parts in it are hatches that go up and down, and then everything else you just install. But when you actually have to create something that is supposed to work, that nobody else is making, it was one of the more challenging things that made this project a whole lot more rewarding once it was complete. And also, as far as cable routing, I went ahead and chopped that and put another tube right in the middle to route all the cables freely, so nothing had to be wrapped around the shaft. That actually helped tremendously. Now onto the rod lockers. The whole reason that was like my big thing when I was thinking of this project. Usable rod stowage in those big, like, catamaran tunes. That was my major thing. Everything else was kind of came, but I had this vision from the start of making this dual rod locker, like 12 poles deep, could store 8-foot swim bait rods in there. And I prepped walls with pink foam board because I'm eventually going to stick rod tubes in there and then pour foam around them to get back some of the foam we gutted. When we did attach the aluminum to the plastic hull, we used rivet washers on the back. That way the rivets just wouldn't pull right through the plastic. So we were able to kind of get away with that. And as janky as it looks, actually worked pretty well. And we had quad bilges, 2 in each side, a manual and an auto. There's no way this boat was going to sink as long as it had actual power going to it. It had dual through-hole ports on each side. My personal opinion, way better than the foam blocks. And then also, the more rewarding part is that this whole thing actually worked pretty well. Now to pour in that foam and lock in those tubes, and then we can finally move on to putting sheet metal on the deck. There will be just minimal panels of aluminum sheets because most of the deck is already comprised of all the hatches. There's just those up there, really the front. And then the very, very small parts in the back. And that's it. I got those hatches painted custom green from Nate's, and then I kind of bailed on them and then went and painted them black, and that was stupid. I could have just got different color turf that would have extra those hatches, but too late into it. Made them all black. I put pink foam board everywhere I possibly could to create sound dampening and not have any problems that I had in the Prowler 8. Just tied all that in there. The boat was getting a little heavy for sure, but this is really going to be a one-man monster rig. So with the full kit and gear, plus batteries and me, we should be right at like the boat's capacity. I want to do a custom EVA foam deck like those fancy bass boats, but I just don't have a CNC machine or a scanner to do it, so we're just going to do it the old school way by hand. It'll be very stressful, but it's literally pennies on the dollar, like 10 cents on the dollar for what it would cost to just get it scanned and get it sent to somebody with a designer and a CNC machine. And then, it's just like thousands of dollars, or it could just be a few $100s like it is now. And you can just make your own design. You don't have to do this. Like, you just make contour lines. Those are extremely easy to do. You just have to have like a straight edge. Then you can guide your router right down. You can buy straight like flat bits and contouring bits that you use for wood, and routing foam is tremendously easier than routing wood. So if you're a craftsman or carpenter and you've done some of that stuff, then routing foam like this would be a breeze. Maybe not all those designs, but I mean, that's just my thing. So if you have some strings and stuff left over, you can go ahead and possibly burn the edges off with a very, very low temp soldering iron. That's a Milwaukee battery powered one. It's the lowest temp one I can find. You can get a really good, nice laser edge look to it with that little kind of burn technique, but then you can also burn the turf. It doesn't look good. So it's whatever. I guess if you really look close at it, you can tell that it was kind of done by hand and not perfectly by some robotic CNC machine, but you can get eerily close. Very, very close, comparable results. Save yourself a crap ton of money. This is HydroTurf DIY self-routing sheets, by the way. Nobody else sells this but us, and the only reason we even convinced HydroTurf to do it is because we showed them that we could do it like this. Before that, they didn't even think it was possible. So they didn't even like offered it to the general public for DIYers like us to do it, but well, they do now. Thank you, HydroTurf, for the awesome product. It's UV resistant. It's going to look nice, last. It'll be great. And this wasn't the first time I attempted this. This was like about 4 or 5 boats in, and this was definitely the most intricate and advanced, where I really kind of had a big understanding from the last build into this one of just how far I could actually press it. Now it's just finishing up all the wiring, rigging, and the external outfitting. Really, it's just a hollow body in there, and the hatches themselves have drop-in liners that we also got custom made. We can custom make anything for you. It'll just take a lot longer and be more expensive, but you'll get exactly what you wanted. And no way that we could have pulled this project off without a lot of help from our Midwest shop, who creates most of the aluminum products, like those hatches and the liners and the framing kits, all of it. Check that out. We got battery compartment back there, and we were able to fit some low-key lithium batteries in there, rig the cutoff switches, all the panels, everything. We even slided a bump board thing in there. So if you're in some of these tournaments where, you just take a picture of the fish on a bump board, well, it's just very, very convenient and easy to slide in and out. Stuck one of our custom corner caddies in there, and also one of our low profile aluminum day boxes on the side, which really I needed that so bad. Those like vertical day boxes, they save all my builds. On game day, I was pretty confident, but there was like everybody saying it was a floating death trap and it was just gonna sink right on demand. I was thinking there was no way that would be possible, but I was worried though that it wouldn't perform very well given everything we did to it. Thankfully, all the know-it-all Karens who thought it would sink were wrong. Who would have guessed? Took a little bit of getting used to, all about 10-15 minutes, and then it just really felt quite nice. It's definitely more stable, and there's way more walking room than the average kayak. So even just putting on a simple wood deck over this build would theoretically be worth it. In fact, most people who mod boats like these, a deck goes on there and it improves the quality of fishing on the craft tremendously. But, all those hatches, that just makes the deck 100 times better. And then also the live scope turret, I only needed it to go slightly to the right or slightly to the left, which is really all it does. And that's good, so when I'm paralleling a shoreline or a weed line, I can actually see what's on the weed line. That's really all I needed from that. And then the anchors, well, they worked tremendously well. In fact, if I could just replicate these, have somebody manufacture them for me, they're a super big pain to make all those mods. So they only want to make them once, but man, do they work really good on this boat as a concept. I know this thing is plastic, but when we're talking about a 10-foot platform for fishing, is there really a better one in terms of, its ability to float and stay stable? I think the catamaran design does tremendous for the boat despite its size. I do not think you could get the same result out of a 10-foot John boat unless it was like 40 plus inches on the bottom. Then maybe, but still probably not. This thing was really stable for how small it was. The biggest asset of the hull with those tunes was that they were all the way across with no contour, so I could maximize the length of the storage to get like 8-foot rods in. In closing, despite the hull being low quality plastic, I couldn't find another hull at this size that could do what this boat did. And that is the story of the Prowler 10.